So June 16th was packed with two movies that I have had thoughts about recently. So I thought, why not go through each of these movies since they are very different in terms of quality. I'm gonna go in the order I watched them, and there will be a chapter system for the movie you want to hear about. So let's talk about The Flash. So I need to clarify that I am not the biggest fan of DC movies overall. There are movies I do enjoy that they made, like The Suicide Squad, The Batman, and Wonder Woman, but most of the time, their movies never really kept me engaged, like Wonder Woman 1984, Man of Steel, or Aquaman. I say this so that I can say The Flash was one of the most boring superhero movies I have ever seen. I am shocked that DC made a movie that was worse than Quantumania, the literal bottom of the barrel of the MCU. Now, before I get into why I don't like this movie, I will say that the only thing I liked in this movie was Batman. Batman was the only character with a brain and good comedy, and it's shocking to say that since it's motherfucking Batman. He actually had the best action scenes in the movie as well, though that's probably because they didn't use much CGI in his scenes, but I digress. Anyway, onto the shit I really don't like. I thought the story had a bit of that Mario movie pacing problem, where the scenes don't have time to take in the situation, and it really bothers me. But at least it's not as bad as it is in the Mario movie, but it still is a problem. Like, I couldn't really connect to the characters in this movie because I didn't really learn much about these new versions of Batman and Supergirl. Unless your name is Barry Allen, then you are basically not fleshed out. But Barry was a character I didn't really enjoy, with him whining so much and being so uptight when that wasn't really Barry in Justice League. What also didn't help with the movie is that the comedy was generally god awful. I did not laugh a single time watching this movie, and normally DC movies have a good joke, more so than the average MCU films, excluding the Guardians of the Galaxy, of course, because Guardians is peak. When we got to the argument scene with the Barrys, other actors, and Back to the Future, I was thinking to myself, God, Barbie can't come out any sooner, can it? The acting in this movie is really stilted. It sounds very monotone. There are some moments where the actors really sell the emotion, but it's mostly drowned out by either stilted line deliveries or awful comedic bits. The visual effects are not that appealing, with some shots being on par with this shot right here from Quantumania. Yeah, now you can't get that out of your brain. Action scenes look fine overall with the CGI, but the movements of certain objects and characters really kill it overall and kept out of the moment throughout the movie. I also remembered seeing the end of the movie and seeing all the cameos from the other DC projects like The Flash show and just groaned, because honestly at this point, multiverse movies having so many Easter eggs is starting to get on my nerves. At least make it integral to the plot and or world like in the Spider-Verse movies. I am having a hard time describing what else I don't like in this movie, because honestly this is one of those movies where I forget the movie as soon as I watched it. So all I can say is that you don't need to watch this movie at all, and it's the worst movie of the year so far. Like I said, worse than Quantumania, and that was the movie people were saying is the best superhero movie of all time, and the movie that James Gunn was hyping up, and it's hilarious to think about. 2 out of 10. Now let's talk about something I actually enjoyed somewhat: Elemental. I remember when this movie was shown and many people, including me, were not liking the marketing for it, though most kids movies have awful trailers even if it's good. But I just remember that every clip and trailer I saw just made me go, it looks interesting, but the dialogue we've heard is kind of cringy as well as the humor. Also the fact that Lightyear was the return to theaters that I think most people weren't expecting. But what did I think of the movie? It was quite good. There are things that kept this movie back from being great, but I overall enjoyed the experience. The trailers definitely mismarketed the movie and made it look like something else instead of what it really is. The movie is about Ember being a child of immigrants trying to become her own person, but feeling as though she is embedded to her parents for the sacrifices they made for her. Then after about 30 minutes, the romance enters the plot. The movie also marketed this little piece of shit character as someone important to the story, but he only shows up for like, I think a collective 5 minutes, and those 5 minutes are cringe to the fucking max.
An act of God or an act of Claude? Shut the fuck up!
Oh, and the one girl was fine, I guess. But that doesn't mean I hate the story. The first 15 minutes of the movie where we see Ember's parents enter Element City when she is about to run a sale as perfect, and the interactions with Ember, her family, and Wade are moments where I was invested in what they were speaking. Near the end, when Ember and Wade are at the Garden Museum and are looking at the plants underwater, was a moment that felt very Pixar, and it actually was interested in the romance, and the two had great chemistry. Also, is it just me, or does the whole thing with fire being dangerous only exist with water in this movie? Because it really happens with the main romance. Also, Earth needs water to grow, and air is one of the things that fuels fire, so this is a little confusing to say the least. The humor in this movie is not good whatsoever. The funny thing is that the pruning joke was the worst one in the movie, and they marketed it, which is just mind-boggling to me. Though the humor probably didn't do it for me because it was either in the trailer or was a predictable element joke, like Fireball being an insult to fire people. The animation is really creative for Pixar, with certain scenes just being breathtaking to look at, like in the major scenes focusing on the romance with Ember and Wade. Also, the way the elements move makes it look so lifelike. It's a visual spectacle. Even though they are just moving all the time, it's still amazing. The ending was something I had a hard time digesting because it does the two things I despise in movies. The first one is an Act 3 misunderstanding, which is just like why the point of a misunderstanding is to cause drama, and it just doesn't work every time I see it in a movie. The movie also does the worst cliche in any movie where you think the character is dead, but then they just come back at the end. I mean, with how it's set up, it seemed logical that the character would come back somewhat, but it still ruins the immersion. This movie isn't doing well at the box office, with it being projected lower than The Flash. That is a timeline not worth living in. And with the mixed reaction I have seen towards this movie, I am worried about Pixar. They had a strong start at the beginning of the decade with Soul and Luca, but now with the mixed reaction to this and Lightyear, which are Pixar's return to theaters, and with Pixar having to cut 75 jobs, it's kind of worrying that Pixar might be on the chopping block. They still have that drive to make greatness, and it can happen because films like Soul, Luca, and Turning Red are good to great movies with a lot of heart and soul put into them. But if this keeps up, then Pixar will be in a bad place. But overall, I would say I recommend this movie. Watch it, form your own opinion. If you don't like it, that's fine. 7 out of 10. A pretty fun watch. If you liked today's video, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more. Make sure to follow me on Twitter and Letterboxd, link in the description. Be sure to also check my podcast, The Anonymous Gamer, where me, Protector of Memes, and a few guests that we have are in the show, talk about video games and whatnot and be stupid while doing it.
Craig is omnipotent.
Oh no.
Craig sees all.
He's gonna know too much. He's gonna know too much by the end of this.
The playlist will be in a link in the description. Until then, I'm Avatar Aiden, and I will see you all next time.